Hello, everyone. We are here for month three of the Tennis Insiders Club. Here we are from my humble abode in Denver, Colorado, and I know some of you that are going to be getting on the call might be a few minutes late, so we're just going to chill out here for a few minutes before we get started to review what we've been up to the last couple of months. Hopefully, those that are on the call have had time to go through month one, month two, and now we're in month three, and check out some of the powerful lessons that I've been sharing the last couple of months. It's been a ton of fun to put this program together because this is the first time that I've really systematically, week by week, month by month, given you all a progression on how you can improve and take your tennis to the next level. All of my other courses are based more on strokes or footwork, and this one just takes you step by step, week by week, so it's been a lot of fun. But like I said, we're going to wait a few minutes before we get going. We're going to have our hour of power on with the Tennis Insiders Club, and we're going to talk serves and returns. We're going to talk footwork tonight, and just hopefully I can give you a few little nuggets that are going to continue to take you to the next level. So just stand by for a few minutes, grab a piece of paper and a pen, your notebook, or just sit and chill and listen. Grab some water. I've got my Gerald Steiner sparkling water. This is the healthiest sparkling water on the planet, and since I'm not a big drinker, my little dessert or my reward, my little treat that I give myself is sparkling water. I know it's not too crazy, but I feel a whole lot better in the morning when I hit it hard with the Gerald Steiner sparkling water. All right, well, we'll give it a couple more minutes before we get going, and I hope everyone's doing well and getting out there and practicing, having a great summer wherever you are in the world or around the U.S. I'm going to get my notes handy here. Now that we're in month three, it's starting to pile up, everything going on with every lesson every week, building upon the prior week. So just a reminder that these calls are recorded. So of course, if you can't make the call, we put it inside the membership site. We've got it in the Facebook group. You can access these calls anytime you want. So they're there for you. And of course, if you are on the call, you can feel free to ask questions, post the questions in the Facebook group tonight or tomorrow or next week, whenever you feel like it. This is a go at your own pace type of program. So if you get a little behind, you can certainly catch up. If you've got a lot going on in your life, that's okay. You can catch up, or you can skip a few weeks and still be okay, because each month we're really trying to focus on one specific theme. So if you do have questions, you can go ahead and post those in the Facebook group again during the call, after the call, tomorrow, and I'll get to them and help you out. But I anticipate that tonight, when we talk a little bit about serve and return from month two, we talk a lot about footwork, you're going to get some golden nuggets that maybe you missed through the lessons, or maybe I'm going to really emphasize tonight, and it's going to hit home since you've seen some of the lessons. All right, I'll give it one more minute, and then we're just going to power through this tonight because I'm sure you all have a lot going on. I know I do. At the time that we're recording this call or doing this live call, we are creating probably the best program that we've ever put together. And I say the best because it's the type of program that can transform someone's game clearly without a lot of technical adjustments. And so many players out there that have been playing for many years have challenges changing their technique. So this program is actually not about technique. And I'm not going to give it away because we're going to launch this thing in a couple of weeks. You guys are going to love this. I love how we put together this program. We continue to learn from previous programs how we can improve, how we can make it better. So super excited to put it together. It's taking us a ton of time. We were actually filming up until 30 minutes before this call. So I've still got my game shirt on, Broncos orange. I usually wear red, but now we're going, well, it's kind of burnt orange. It's like Cleveland Brown-ish, but this is the closest thing I have to a tennis shirt that's Bronco orange. And of course, I'm getting excited for them because we're in the preseason right now, getting ready for the regular season. All right, enough football talk, enough rambling. Let's get started. So we're in we're in month 3, week 3. So that means that you have seen 2 weeks of the month 3 lessons, which the theme of month 3 is footwork, and now we're in that 3rd week. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about month 2, because when we did month 2, we were clearly in month 2, week 3. So there were a couple of weeks that we didn't talk about last month. So month 2 is about serve and return. And so I chose to bring serve and return into month 2 because after month 1, where we focused on your foundation and getting you feeling more solid about specific drills to do, positions in the court to stand to hit your ground strokes, I thought it was imperative that we got the serve and return training going. And so in week 1 of month 2, we talked a lot about making the serve your baby. And what I mean by that is really taking time. I know you guys all have busy schedules and you're probably not playing tennis every day. If you were, you'd be playing on the pro tour, right? You play once or twice a week, but some of you who are really serious about improving, you're going to want to practice your serve at different times on your own. So getting a hopper of balls or getting a basket of balls or getting a grocery bag with balls in it and practicing, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, hitting the targets. That's what week 1 was all about, was practicing your serve, hitting the targets, and really focusing on, excuse me, I got a little stuck here with my notes. Oh, we might have to ad-lib it a little bit. All right, so focusing on the serve and building on that, and then getting into serve patterns. So in week 3 of month 2, we talked about serve patterns, and the one big mistake that I see players making when they play singles or even doubles, but mostly in singles, is they don't have a clear plan on where they're going to hit the first ball after the serve. It becomes very, very reactive. A lot of players just focus on the serve and then the ball comes back, and there's not a lot of planning involved. And I've found that if you really are clear on your targets and where you want to hit the ball after the serve, it can make a huge difference in your clarity, your confidence. You'll feel calmer. And we talked about in that week 3, we talked about the first thing you want to do is you want to play through the middle of the court. There is no reason to miss wide on the first ball after the serve. You know, a lot of coaches will talk about hitting in the net, not missing and, not making mistakes in the net. But no one really talks about not missing wide. And at the pro level, we always talk about playing through the middle of the court first and then starting to play towards the sideline. So you really reduce your risk of error on the first ball by not going too close to the sidelines. So playing through the middle. And then the next progression is to play more cross court and to play closer to the lines and to be more aggressive in that way. And then the third progression is to play to a weakness. So you might have to play to half of the court, where let's say someone has a weak backhand, you direct that ball, whether you have to hit it down the line or cross court. Ahead of time before you hit the serve, your goal is to get it to one half of the court, get it to the weaker backhand, and make them struggle. And so that's a really important concept that you want to practice, getting it to the weakness, because a lot of players, they're great when they can hit their strength. And if you start points out where you're hitting 1, 2, 3 shots to the strength, they love that. So as early in the point as possible, you want to get it to the weakness. But the reason why that's the third progression is because I feel that players get ahead of themselves and they focus too much on getting it to the weakness, playing it too close to the lines and making errors. So that's why I like to start out first with this concept of play down the middle first. Don't worry about getting it to the weakness just yet. Focus on getting it down the middle first, then playing cross court, then going to the weakness. So that's the progression that you want to go through. Now, we also focused on returns in month 2. And it's so important that you understand what to do on your returns, especially when we're focusing on targets and routines. And again, I think that players are going for too much on returns, are going too close to the sidelines, just like the serves. The serve, or I should say, just like the serve where you hit to targets, you want to hit to targets with the returns. So you're going to practice hitting down the middle of the court on your returns as well, just like playing the first ball after the serve through the middle. If you can hit a return hard through the middle, then you're going to be in an advantage. But before you do that, shadow stroking is a great exercise to do. I mean, if you're super committed, super passionate, you get to practice early, you can be that weird guy or gal that does the shadow strokes and everyone's looking at. Or you just got to do it at home when no one's watching. I was probably that guy. I was the guy who did the shadow strokes when no one was watching because I didn't want people giving me a hard time. So you might have to find a private place to do your shadow strokes. But it's so important to do that just to kind of lock in and practice your routines and your footwork. And if you can find someone to hit serves at you, if you can hire a club pro or set it up in a way where you find a kid or a hitting partner, that would help too. But if you don't have access to that, or if you don't have the time, when you get out and play your matches or practice, you want to lock into your targets. You want to lock in to practicing hitting down the middle of the court. What I find with a lot of players when they return serve is that they're late on returns. So sometimes they hit the ball down the line, or they hit the ball down the line in the net, which is the worst error. And I even see high-level juniors and even college players missing there sometimes. But if you have that problem of missing wide down the line or hitting returns down the line, what we talked about in month 2 was this concept called the exaggeration secret, easier for me to say. And with the exaggeration secret, you want to aim cross court and literally try to miss your return cross court. Because again, most players rarely miss their returns wide cross court. They're either late and they hit the ball down the line, or they hit it in the net. If you're early and you miss wide, that's a good miss. And a lot of times when I tell players to miss wide cross court, I tell them, okay, if you hit this return clean, if you hit it in the center of the strings, you're probably not going to miss it wide. It'll go cross court, or it'll go down the middle. You'll hit an amazing return. The times that you do miss wide cross court is when you just pull off the ball and mishit the return. So start paying attention to your aim on your returns and seeing where do you miss, where do most of your returns go, and play around with that exaggeration concept. We also talked about, in one of the episodes in month 2, we talked about attacking the second serve. And there's different ways that you can do it. And I know I mentioned this in last month's call, but I always like to review certain lessons that we went over in the previous call because, we forget, or we don't review, or, it's just nice to hear it again. I mean, I've been coaching for several years now, and I still am giving the same tricks and strategies on the court to the same players 5 years later. And sometimes they look at me like they've heard it for the first time. So maybe it's like being a parent. You have to repeat yourself a lot. And so I'm repeating again. I'm going to tell you, you should be attacking second serves, and you can do it in different ways. So you can do it by driving your returns. You can stand on the baseline, take the ball early and drive the ball, and then look for a short ball on the next shot. You can actually move back a few feet. A lot of traditional coaches will tell you on second serves, you've got to stand in on the baseline or inside the baseline. And many players can do that, but others are late, or they're rushed, or they don't have time, or they get jammed. So when I was playing on the tour, there were times I was nervous and I was getting jammed myself trying to take returns early and being aggressive. What helped me was to move back 2 or 3 feet behind, and even behind the baseline on second serves. So you would think, gosh, why would you do that? The serve's coming slower. My opponent will have more time. Well, sometimes when you're nervous, you need more time. Your body's kind of freezing up or you're a little tight. You need more time to take a good swing at the ball. So I have players move back. If they're rushed and struggling or if it's a big point, move back 2 feet and just crush the return down the middle of the court, or aim it to a corner if you feel like you can do it. Now, the other play, the third progression, is to actually hit and go in. And a lot of pro players should be doing this more. Federer actually, at the time of this call, he just won Cincinnati, 2015 Masters Series in Cincinnati, and all of a sudden he's short hopping second serve returns and coming in, taking his backhand and driving it coming in. I'm scratching my head. I'm going, wait a minute, Roger, I've been like yelling at the TV for 5 years for you to do this, and you haven't been, and you still were the best player in the world, but you started losing more matches because you're too passive on returns. And now at 34, working with Edberg, taking the ball early, he's looking to come in. He's more confident coming in, and he's more confident coming over his backhand return. He used to be just content chipping the ball and getting it in. Now he's hitting and going in, and I love it. And that's what you can do. You can stand inside the baseline, take your return, rip it through the middle of the court, run in, kamikaze style, close the net, boom, knock off a volley, just like the pros. You can also drop. You can also chip. You can also chip and charge. Now that's an old school play that a lot of pros. I mean, most pros don't. It's dead. Like pros don't do it. But as a recreational player, if you have a good slice or a decent slice, you can use that slice against rec players, and they're going to freak out. They don't know how to handle slice. The pros, they can usually handle slice pretty well, so they don't do it as much. That's why the drive and go in is, I think, a better play at the pro level. But at the recreational level, I mean, let's chip and go in, and even if it's a bluff, even if it's not a great chip, a lot of rec players cannot stand slice or anything that has side spin on it. So really commit to attacking the second serve in the different ways that I just mentioned part of your game. Like, don't be predictable. Don't just stand in one place and hit the same return over and over again. You're just not going to throw your opponent off if you do that. Okay, where are we going next? We're going to go to month 2, week 4. And this is a bit of a review of what I talked about with the serve, where we talked about serve and first ball. Now we're talking about return and first ball, but there's a little twist here. What's the twist? The buggy whip and the recoil. I know, funky names that I came up with about certain shots, but we're going to talk about this in a minute. Now, the return and first ball might even be more important than the serve and first ball. And the reason is that when you hit a return of serve, a lot of times you're either neutral or on defense because the server has the advantage. So you have to find a way to be very solid and consistent on the first ball after the return. A lot of coaches talk about, okay, just get the ball in play and make as many balls as you can. Very general tactic. For me, I like to be more specific, and I like to just focus on one shot at a time. I don't need all of you to hit 10 balls in a row in. I need the return to go in and the first ball to go in. And the reason why is because I have found from my personal experience playing the game and in coaching that a lot of players at all levels, more so at lower levels, not necessarily at the pro level, but at the junior level, the rec level, most players miss too many returns and too many first balls after the return. So what happens is there's too many points played in a set where returns and first balls are missed. So let's say you play a set and you make 7 return errors. Let's say 5 return errors and 5 first ball errors after the return. That's 10 points you're giving away. That's 2.5 games. Now, what if you cut that number in half? You'd be 5 points better, probably more than 5 points better, because when you do that, you put more pressure on the server. Every return is getting back in the court no matter what. You're aiming down the middle of the court so you never miss wide. You hit through a big target over the net, so you're hitting through an imaginary window, so you never miss in the net. The only mistake you ever make is wide. That's a lot of pressure on the server. Or what about the first ball? Have you ever hit a return and then you have no idea what to do on the next shot? You're running across the court and you panic and you dump that ball in the net, or you catch it late and you miss it wide. Well, I can tell you that when I played my best tennis, I'd hit the return, but before the point started, I knew where that first ball was going to go. Unless I had a sitter, I could always change my mind. But the idea is that you hit the return and you're in a defensive position after the return or even neutral. The first ball should go down the middle of the court, just like I talked about with the serve. Go down the middle of the court first. Make a ton of balls. Be aggressive with your swing, but go down the middle. Put some pressure on the opponent. Don't miss wide. Now, once you get consistent with that, you can actually play return games doing that. You can play a return game to 7 where your opponent serves to 7, and all you do is work on returning and going down the middle on the first ball. Once you get that down, go cross court. Hit the return, but before the points start, tell yourself, say, okay, I'm going to return down the middle, and then if the ball comes to my forehand or backhand, I'm going cross court no matter what. And don't focus on anything else. Don't get confused with any technique, any footwork, what you're going to do on the third or fourth shot. Just give me the first 2 balls. If you can give me a quality 2 shots, there's a really good chance that you're going to make the third ball. You start building rhythm and consistency. We want rhythm and consistency in your game, and that starts by eliminating the return errors and the first ball errors. Now, once you hit cross court, now if you start hitting really good returns and you're hitting that first ball cross court and you're getting hurt and you're consistent, but you're still getting hurt and it's going to the forehand too much, let's say your opponent has a big forehand, now you've got to get it to the weakness, just like I talked about earlier with the serve. You've got to hit the return and do whatever you can to steer the first ball to the weakness. Let's assume it's a backhand. Get it to that backhand side. Don't let your opponent serve and start hitting monster forehands. Just don't let them do it. Now, make sure, and I've seen this happen a lot, that if you decide to play the weakness on that first ball after the return and you're missing that ball, you've got to go back to the down the middle play or the cross court play. You cannot just give away points because you're trying so hard to get it to the weakness. Can't do it. You've got to focus on the simple play first, and that's playing hard and solid through the middle of the court. Play with your opponent. I like to talk to my students and say, play with your opponent by not actually hitting it away from them right away. Actually hit the ball right to them, as long as it's deep. Hit the ball right to them until you get a rhythm, until you get the right ball to play to the open court or to create angle or to go on the offense. So just make sure when you decide to play the weakness that you're not missing that ball. And let's say you play that first ball and you try to go to the weakness and you catch it a little early and it goes through the middle and your opponent hits another forehand. Well, then maybe the next ball you try to get it to weakness. You're just trying to get it there as early as you can. Now, getting into the buggy whip and the recoil, that was episode 2 in month 4. I'm sorry, episode 2. I can't even say the words tonight with months and weeks. Episode 2 of month 2, week 4. We talked about the buggy whip and the recoil. And actually, we talked about the high forehand finish. So what's that all about? If you've been following my content for any length of time, you know that I teach the buggy whip on the forehand. This is a more advanced concept. I don't recommend it for people just starting out. You should just hit your regular forehand. But what I've found is that sometimes aiming to targets, like I just talked about, middle, cross court, play the weakness, those concepts can work really well. But what if your forehand is off? What if your backhand is off? And it could be something technical. You need to have a little technical swing thought, just like if you're a golfer. Sometimes golfers need to have one little swing thought if they're not in the zone to get them back in the zone. So the first concept is after you hit a return, you tell yourself or you visualize you're going to finish high and over the shoulder, because a lot of players short arm their forehand and do not follow through all the way. They just kind of chop at the ball or stop or finish low, or their arm is heavy and they're nervous. So you want to follow through over the shoulder on the first ball after the return. You commit to that. You tell yourself before the point, okay, I'm nervous, I'm pulling off the ball, I'm not hitting great shots, I'm going to hit the return, and then if I get a forehand, I'm going to put my racket here when I'm done. I am going to follow through high. What does that do? That allows you to get more depth and more height, and we want depth and height. So focus on the high finish first with the forehand, and that's in the lesson, of course. You can study it. Now next is hit the buggy whip as your first ball. So the reason why the buggy whip works so well on return games is that many times after the return, you are under intense stress. You're hitting a return and then you're on the run. You're reaching for a ball. You're struggling. The ball is low. The ball is high. It's out of your strike zone. That's where you want to use the buggy whip. Now, this is not the buggy whip. Let me do my little Google Hangout demonstration without a racket. The buggy whip is not where you swing and you come straight up over your dominant shoulder. Okay, you're not Maria Sharapova, all right? Maria's a great player, but I do give her a hard time because she does the buggy whip all wrong. Maria, are you listening tonight? I know you're in New York. You're probably having a 5-star dinner, but if you were listening and you could hear this, I could help your buggy whip in 5 minutes and we could take your forehand to the next level. Well, maybe not 5. I could show you the concept and then you could use it. Okay, I got sidetracked. I'm passionate about this stuff. Can't you guys tell? I get excited because I'm like, gosh, Maria's like, what, 2, 3 in the world? Just give me 5 minutes and then let's work on it for like 3 months consistently and I'll give you a world-class buggy whip forehand if you're willing to listen, okay? All right, back to business. So the buggy whip, you've got to finish with your hand above your head. You've got to go out, you've got to extend and finish up above your head. Now, people say, oh my gosh, why are you teaching the buggy whip to rec players? Are you nuts? Okay, maybe I'm a little teeny bit crazy. That's okay, between you and me. But look at this. If I finish over my shoulder and then I just raise my hand up about 4 to 6 inches, look what I have. I've got the buggy whip. It's the same as finishing high. I just move my hand above my head. And also, why are all the pros doing it? Because it's easier. It's easier to use a buggy whip if you do it right. And when you do that, the ball clears the net, and you get more topspin and you get more depth. Lots of bonuses there. So if you're a person that misses your forehand in the net after the return, you might want to try to use the buggy whip. I know some TIC, some insider club members that are using the buggy whip and they love it. So give it a shot. What happens if you return and it comes to your backhand? Sometimes you're under stress on the backhand. The ball is not too high. If the ball's in your strike zone or lower, use the slice. I used to hit big, like not big returns, but solid returns, but then my opponents were so good they could run me on the next ball. I'd run over there and use the slice backhand. Neutralize the opponent, slow things down. If you don't have a good slice, start practicing it. But I really like using the slice on that first ball after the return. Once you neutralize, then you can start coming over the ball and driving through the backhand. Sound good? Catch the forehand, use the buggy whip forehand, slice the backhand. Month 2, done. You guys ready for month 3? All right. Let's get this party started. Footwork. I am passionate about footwork. I have studied footwork my entire, well, not my entire life, probably later in my pro career because I realized I actually had pretty good footwork as a junior, as a college player, but it was all pretty natural. I mean, I had players that would, or coaches or my parents, my 2 dads, my stepdad and my biological father were both my coaches and great coaches, by the way, and great guys. Miles and Richard, awesome. And my mom, Jan, by the way, she's awesome too. Can't leave her out. But the deal is they were great on telling me to focus on my footwork fundamentals, to get on my front foot, to step in, to just have good balance in footwork. That's pretty much all they said. And then I did the rest. It was pretty natural. But then later in my career, I started studying the pros. And I was like, wait a minute, there's certain footwork patterns that I was never taught and I'm not really doing, and I need to become conscious of it and I need to practice it. So it opened up kind of, not Pandora's box, it opened up my world when I realized that footwork could really be taught in a conscious way to players that wanted to learn it, that were capable of doing it. And so footwork is just, like I said, I'm very passionate about it. I remember giving lessons to some juniors a few years ago, high-level juniors, and the mom would come to the lessons and she would just sit there and she was like, how do you teach this stuff? Like, you don't, no one else in the world teaches footwork like you do. I mean, I've been around, I've studied, I've had my kids take lessons from all these guru coaches. You are like the footwork guy. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm flattered. I mean, The reason why is because I sat and watched hundreds of hours of tapes in hotel rooms and homes and wherever I was staying, traveling around, trying to solve footwork, trying to figure it all out. And I used my background in Tai Chi and studying Tai Chi and the martial arts and movement principles, and then studied Federer and Djokovic and Sampras and Agassi and everyone. Studied everyone, really, and just try to pick up on things. And now I see the way the feet are moving, and I can help people in certain parts of the court figure out ways to use their feet to hit better shots. So again, it's just something I'm very passionate about. I think it's, I guess, I don't know if it's a gift because I've spent many hours studying it, but it's just something that I love to teach. And so month 3 is just cool for me to bring you some footwork stuff. We have a transition footwork course that's awesome. All of our stroke courses, we have all the footwork patterns, and it's advanced stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of you out there that might only use 1 or 2 concepts that I teach, but you know what? That's 1 or 2 concepts more than you're gonna learn down the street from your traditional coach. And okay, I'm not knocking traditional coaches. Well, I kind of am, but everyone's working hard, meaning well, trying to be the best coach they can be. But I do find so many mistakes being made with the way footwork is taught. It actually has made players unnatural with how they move. So I'm really into finding the natural ways for players to play. So enough talking about my passion on footwork and about myself. I should probably teach you guys something, right? Okay, let's do this. Month 3, week 1, episode 1. What did we start with? We started with the split step. Of course, the mysterious split step. This is what, I mean, gosh, I've heard everything about the split step. So the first concept, I was at a coaching convention a couple years ago, and a world-class coach was teaching the split step. And he asked this question. He said, when your opponent hits the ball, what should you be doing with your split step? Should you be on the ground? Should you have already jumped and landed on the ground? Should you be on your way up? Should you be off the ground, on your way up? Should you be coming down? Should you be at the highest point in the jump? And about 15 coaches raised their hand, and I think maybe 1 person got it right, if 1. And that's like 15 USPTA coaches that are teaching players every day to split step. And they were teaching them wrong. This can't be. I mean, we've got to get more coaches teaching the split step the correct way. And the coach that was teaching it was correct. And I have a lot of respect for this coach. Amazingly gifted coach. So it was an honor for me to listen to that talk. And I actually did know the answer because I think I had studied it with someone else. Someone explained it to me. But essentially, you want to be at the height of your jump or your hop when the ball is struck on the other side of the net. So most players are either still on the ground and the ball is hit and then they split and they jump, or they've already jumped. Most of the time, that's what it is. Or they jump and they're already on the ground. The last thing you want to do is be on the ground when your opponent makes contact. So if you ever get a chance to freeze frame the pros, when the opponent is hitting the ball, see what Federer or Murray or Djokovic are doing. They are in the air when the ball is struck. This is such an important concept. So many of you out there that are jumping too late, splitting too late, you're behind, and that's why your movement is suffering, because you're jumping, you're actually leaving the ground as the ball is being struck, and you're dead in the water. It's done. So you want to be in the air when the ball is struck. Now what happens is when the ball is struck and you're in the air, when you come down, the ball has already come off the racket. Your brain is processing which direction the ball is coming in. So when you land, these are your feet. When you land, if you're really athletic, one of your feet, yeah, one of your feet, is that right, English? Okay, one of your feet actually will turn out and move in the direction of where you want to go. And you don't even have to think about it. So there's been a lot of talk about, I hear a lot of coaches teaching, I think they call it a gravity step, or basically when you land, they teach you to step out with this foot. If you're going to move this direction, they teach you to step out. And if you're going to move this direction, they teach you to step out with the outside foot. In my opinion, that's the death of your footwork. It's going to kill your footwork when you do that. So coaches have been coaching the split step wrong and this gravity step concept wrong for years. I was taught the wrong way by people. Then I started watching the pros. And so what happens is when you're in the air, the ball is struck, one of the feet, like in the direction you're going to go, is going to turn out naturally. So I kind of call it a pivot, or the foot turns, but you don't have to consciously think about it. And then what you want to focus on is making a strong crossover move. So your foot is going to cross over. So you do not step out with this foot. If you want to go to that direction, you're going to cross over. Everybody like my hand diagrams with the feet? I'm sure I'm confusing more than I'm solving right now, but I'm doing my best, so hang with me here. But more of that movement's talked about actually in episode 2. So episode 1 is more about timing the split step. So there's 2 types of split steps that you could mimic or copy. One is Andy Murray's. This guy jumps super high. So if you're used to being really grounded and stuck on the ground, you might want to practice jumping really high off the ground and exaggerating. It might exaggerate. It might look funny at first, but just getting used to getting off the ground. Now, when you jump high, you're going to have to jump sooner. So as the ball is going into the opponent, it hasn't been struck yet, it's bounced and it's going towards the opponent, you actually have to consciously jump in the air and be in the air when the ball is struck. The other option is to focus more on a lower jump, like a quicker little split step, quick little jump and move. Djokovic does more of this, so you can study his split step. But again, he's off the ground when the ball is struck. When you're practicing this, you can shadow with a split step. Excuse me, this mineral water got me tonight. Apologize. Anyway, split step and then move to a ground stroke with a shadow stroke. And you can do that for a few minutes. So you're going to split and then you're going to move. Then you can exaggerate the split step when you rally from the baseline. Then you can play baseline games, serve return games, and really practice that the split step for every shot. So you might lose the game 11-7 or 7-3 because your game is a little off, but at least you're practicing your split step, okay? So that's week 1. Now, when we get to week 2, or I'm sorry, not week 2, but episode 2, we're talking about the split step and go. And that's what I was starting to allude to, is that you want to make sure that when you touch down, you are going to go. A lot of players split and they kind of wait, and then they have to start back up again. You want to split and have a strong crossover move. A lot of players with that crossover move or that move to the ball, it's not explosive enough, it's not quick enough. So make sure that you focus on that quick explosion. Okay, I looked at the time here. We're already 35 minutes in, and I still have to get to week 2 and week 3. So I better get going here. But the focus is split and go. So you want to touch down and go, and you want to focus on that first move, because a lot of players, they don't make a good first move, and then they have to take several choppy steps to get to the ball. You want to land and make a big crossover move, a big athletic move. Now, if you don't have a lot of leg strength or a lot of athleticism, your crossover move is going to be small. It's not going to be that explosive. So you might want to also work on strengthening your legs so that you can really push off. Play baseline games where you only focus on touch and go, explode, move quickly, and don't step out with that outside leg. Focus more on moving with that first step with the inside foot, not the outside leg. Okay, episode 3 in week 1 was the split step on the return and the volley. And this is where, again, you want to shadow it, because we want to get you comfortable shadow stroking and using shadow footwork with your returns, your volleys, your ground strokes. Just the more reps that you can get, even if it's for a few minutes, it could be part of your warm-up. Instead of going for a jog, do your split step exercises. You're practicing a specific movement that you need in tennis. And you're going to want to play return games where you focus on the split step and the move. Now, with the split step and move, you can actually step out a little more with that outside leg and really load that outside leg. So that's a little different on the return. Now, with the volleys, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, working with a coach. Not going to name any names. I actually really like this coach a lot. He's developed amazing players, but he was talking about after the split on the volley, you want to focus on, again, stepping out, loading this leg, loading this leg, and then going to hit the volley with this step. So it's like a 1-2. And I think that takes too much time. There is a time and a place to do it on balls that are floating and high, but after you split, if the ball is coming over in this direction, you want to think of leading with this foot. Lead with this foot. Do not pick this foot up first. I know it's off the screen. Do not pick this foot up first and then go to step. Probably should have PowerPoints, but you know what? You guys get the idea. You can watch the lessons. You'll get better. I'm talking with my hands right now. Okay, we're having fun with it, right? Just having a good time tonight. So you want to lead with this foot, just like on the ground strokes. You do not want to step out. It takes too much time. It throws your balance off, actually. So you got to lead with that foot. There are exceptions on the high ball, but generally you want to move with that inside foot and move through the ball, okay? Very, very important. Make sure your feet are off the ground when contact is made on all the shots, the volleys and the returns. Okay, so that brings us through week 1, where we focused primarily on the split step. Let's go to week 2. And week 2 is a fun one because the first lesson is about getting on the front foot. Getting on the front foot on any shot you can. There are exceptions, of course. If the ball is super wide, you can hit with an open stance. But I've noticed something happen over the years, and it's kind of the modern tennis myth that a lot of modern advanced coaches that are coaching juniors have all these kids hitting open stance forehands and semi-open. And the ball is sitting in the middle of the court. It's waiting to be stepped in on. And I go old school here. You know, sometimes I bash traditional coaches and old school, but I've got old school in me, okay? I've got new school and I've got old school. And I blend the two together for all of you. And the old school concept is get on that front foot on your ground strokes. Unless the ball is really wide, get on your front foot. Commit to it. The times that I played the most defensive tennis, I was hitting on my back foot, hitting off of my back foot, falling away from the ball, pulling off of the ball. Whenever I committed to getting on the front foot and stepping into my forehand and backhand, I played more aggressive every single time. Now on clay courts, balls that are bouncing high, more open stance, more semi-open. Hard courts, ball bouncing lower, get on that front foot. That means you have to work harder with your feet. That means you have to get your feet in position. But getting on your front foot, this sometimes before a point, I would just say, okay, I'm nervous. Whatever I do on this point, I'm getting on the front foot. That's what I'm going to do. That's who I am today. That is what I'm going to do. And it got me out of a lot of jams. It got me playing aggressive. It got me on my front foot. It got me taking the ball early and getting to the net more instead of playing passive tennis. So get on that front foot. So, so important to do that. Week 2. Besides getting on the front foot, week 2 is all about moving up and moving back in the middle of the court. Many players actually move wide pretty well, but a lot of players struggle moving up and moving back. They don't understand moving up and moving back. So when you move up, you can use what I call is the run-through footwork pattern. And this is one that I've showed 3.0 and 3.5 women that play a lot of doubles. I've actually showed this to them and they pick it up pretty darn fast. It's not perfect, but what I find is a lot of players on the low ball in front of them, they get on their front foot and they're stepping in and they lunge at the ball. And we don't want to lunge at the ball. We want to move through the ball. Also, a misconception with a lot of coaching out there is to stop and hit. So get in position, slow down and stop and hit. But with balls that are low and in front of you, you actually want to move through them. It's the dynamic balance concept that I talk about with footwork patterns. So you want to learn to move through it. So on the run through, study the lesson, but you're going to hit it off of your outside foot. And as you're hitting the ball, you're going to move through and land on the front foot. It's the opposite of stepping in and lunging for the ball. So you've got to make sure that you practice that. If there is one footwork pattern that I would teach 3.0s and 3.5 ladies, it would definitely be that concept of moving through those low balls in the middle of the court and even out wide. But we're talking right now about the middle balls because sometimes those are the trickiest ones. So make sure when you're moving up that you focus on that concept, the run through. Now, what about moving back? What about moving? Gotten on the front foot, you're moving through the ball when it's short and low. How do you move back? Well, if you have time, get back and hit it off your front foot. But a lot of times you don't have time. So this is a case where you could hit off your back foot and you kind of swing your front leg back a little bit. If you study Federer, you'll know what I'm talking about. But watch the lesson. You'll understand when you see it what's happening. And this is probably not something that you want to think too consciously of, but when you see it, you'll realize that, hey, it's okay to hit off my back foot on those deep balls sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. I can do it, and I can actually do it and hit good shots. I don't have to be defensive. And if you're really athletic, you can work on the switch pattern where you can load the outside leg and you can jump and land on the other foot. Now, when you move back, the big thing that I want you to practice is what I call the drop step crossover. So we're getting ready for football season at the time of this call. The quarterback knows how to take the ball from center, drop step, and cross over before he starts shuffling. That's what you have to learn how to do to move back. A lot of players split step and then they kind of backpedal back, do some weird funky footwork that doesn't really work. So you want to practice splitting, pretend you're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, drop step, crossover, and then shuffle. That would be a great little shadow stroke for you to practice. Really, really awesome stuff. But if we can get you more comfortable moving up and back on those tricky balls, you might get 2 to 3 points better a set. And that can be the difference between winning and losing and the difference between having 3, 4, 5 times more enjoyment playing tennis. And that's what it's all about, right? We want to have fun. We want to learn the game. We want to understand why we make mistakes. I'm working with a player again that I've known since she was 10, and she's a Division I college player, and or going to be a Division I college player, and just exceptional kid, exceptional player. And I'm just teaching her all the nuances of the game. It's just so fun. I can see how excited she is. I used to get so frustrated when I would make mistakes and I didn't know how to fix it. So that's what the point of the Tennis Insiders Club is. You guys have access to this world-class pro-level information that I would be teaching. If Federer and I were sitting around, I would show him this stuff, even though he does a lot of it naturally. If I was working with a ranked 400 pro or a top college player, I would show them this stuff. You guys are getting the top-notch level teaching so that when you make mistakes, you might be able to understand how to fix it. I want you to be your own coach. I want you to feel like you understand how to make high-level corrections. There's never been anything like this before online, and that's not just some marketing quote that I just threw out. There really isn't. The level that we're teaching at is very, very high, and I realize, again, some of it's advanced and players can't do it, or players might not be interested in it, but I think there's enough players that really want to understand how is the game played at the highest level. What is really going on? How are they moving? How are they swinging the racket? How are they competing? How are they using their strategy? Okay, I got carried away again. Did we do week 2? Yeah, that was week 2. So now we're on week 3 this week, and we're going to wind down the call with this week, and then I'll take any questions if there are any questions. If there aren't, that's fine too. Again, you can post them in Facebook. No big deal whatsoever. Okay, week 3 now. And in week 3, we are looking at the open stance. And so the open stance is being used when you are wide. Okay, when you get pulled wide, you're going to use the open stance. And the open stance for me does not involve taking 8 steps to get out to the single sideline. If you can learn to split step and make that strong crossover, then you can get out there in 2 steps and cover a lot of ground. Now, if you're smaller or not as explosive, then you can take more steps to get out there. But ideally, you want the big crossover and you want the load of the outside leg, and then you want to hit the ball. And as you're hitting it, you're going to shuffle. And again, I'm repeating what's in the lessons, but I just want people to know that on the wide ball, they can use this open stance and they can get this down. You can shadow this, you can shadow this footwork pattern before you even learn it when you play. That would be the first step in the progression, is to actually learn how to move in this way before you have to compete. You want to do it when you're shadow stroking. You want to do it when someone's feeding you balls. You want to practice to your forehand first, then your backhand second, then go forehand and backhand side to side. Get a ball machine out there and practice it. Make sure you finish in a wide base, okay? Not a narrow base, a wide base. That's so important. So very, very important. And then when you play baseline games, you can focus on stepping in when the ball is in the middle of the court and using the open stance when the ball is wide. Again, the keys are making a strong first move. To get out for that ball, you have to focus on making that strong first move. When you make the strong first move, like I said, you're going to load up, and then you're going to shuffle as you hit the ball, finish in that wide base. Also very important to cut angles. You don't want to move side to side. You want to cut angles, and that's very important to get up to these balls. Also, don't turn sideways, okay? A lot of players turn sideways and run. Unless you're on the dead run, you've got to use your shoulder turn, but face the net more. If you study Federer, this guy is not turning sideways unless he's running straight across the court. And then finally, you want to focus on the outside hop where, sorry, this is episode 2. You want to focus on the outside hop and the back to front footwork pattern. When the ball is moving you wide and you have to move back, that's where you get to have some fun, where you go off of the outside leg. Now on the forehand side, you can hit this like James Blake or some of the top pros, where you load off the outside leg and you just jump a little bit. A lot of you out there might not be able to jump too high, so be careful with this movement. This is highly advanced concept, but you want to use that outside hop pattern on the wide ball or the back to front, more so on the backhand. So on that one, you're going to load the outside leg and then land on the front foot. Sometimes hard to explain in a Google Hangout, right? It'd be better to show the lesson or talk about it. But again, you've got access to the lessons. You can watch the lessons, and again, post any questions or comments. I'll answer them. I'll be there for you guys. And then try to play baseline games where you can integrate it. Try to play serve games where you can do this. And if you can't do the outside hop or the back to front, it's too advanced, don't worry about it. If there's couple of takeaways that I can give you before I wrap up tonight, is that try to get your split step down, the timing of your split step. Try to make a more explosive first move where you don't step out with the outside foot. And try to step in on more balls, 70 or 80% of your shots. Don't hit so many open stance, especially when the ball is in the middle or just off the middle. Save the open stance for when the ball is really wide. But most of the time, you can cover about 2/3 of the court on your forehand and backhand side and still have time to get on your front foot. It's a great concept for you to practice. All right, so we're nearing the end here. We've gone over month 2, where we talked about serves and returns and how you can build that consistency, how you can train the serve and return and train the first ball after. And in month 3, we're in week 3 right now. So we've covered the first 3 weeks where we talked about the split step. We talked about getting on the front foot and dealing with balls in the middle of the court. We talked about running through the low ball, hitting that off the outside foot. Talked about moving back. And then we just finished by talking about the open stance and then using the more advanced patterns of the the outside hop and the back to front. So a lot of information covered. Again, if I could summarize it: split step, time it. All right. Strong first move. Get that going. Step in on 70, 80% of your balls. That's it. If you can't remember anything else from what I just talked about for the last 45, 50 minutes, those are your 3. Time your split. Strong first move. Step into more balls. That's the 80-20 rule right there. Get those things down and you'll be good to go. Okay, like I said, feel free to post the questions that you have in the Facebook group. I'll get to them either tonight, tomorrow, the next day. It's always fun for me just to rap for an hour with you guys. Month 4, get excited for that. We've got some really cool stuff coming in month 4. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to keep you guys in suspense for a couple more weeks. and we're almost at the halfway point. It's going really fast, but I've loved every lesson. I've loved every Google Hangout. I'm really enjoying helping you guys. Super passionate. Really appreciate all of you guys. So grateful to have you on the call, listening to the call. So have a great rest of your evening or morning or wherever you are. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next month on the next call.